Good evening. For this project on AIDS around the world, I have chosen to present on the HIV/AIDS epidemic as it is in France. France is a large country in Europe, shown here on the map in brown. It has a population of approximately 62,814,233 people, of which nearly 80% of them live in urban areas. The French gross national income per capita is about $37,580. Average life expectancy is 82. So what we're dealing with here is a fairly healthy, wealthy, educated population compared to many of the other countries that have been hit harder by the AIDS epidemic. That being said, the current prevalence of HIV in the adult population in France is about 0.4%, and based off of that 62 million per population number, this works out to about 180,000 people currently living with HIV. There's approximately 6,000 new infections each year, and current research suggests that some 29,000 people are still undiagnosed and don't know that they are HIV positive, which is leading to a so-called hidden epidemic of HIV present in France. Some of these figures are illustrated here on the charts presented. On the left, it shows the rate of new HIV infections by year. In 2015, it was at a low of 5,925. This is, as I mentioned, it's approximately 6,000 per year. That's been kind of steady, slightly going down over the past decade, though this is lower than the all-time high of in 2004 of nearly 8,000 infections. And on the right, this graph illustrates the demographic breakdown of new infections. The blue line represents new infections in men who have sex with men. In 2015, 43% of new infections were in men who have sex with men, and this is the demographic that has the largest percent of, or excuse me, they make up the largest segment of the population that has HIV in France overall, not just with the new infections last year. The red, it represents people who are not born in France but from other countries, immigrants, migrants, particularly those people who come from sub-Saharan African countries. Gray represents French nationals, both men and women, who've been infected, and that number is about 8%. And the green is for users of intravenous drugs, and they represent about 2% of the new infections in 2015. In particular, the HIV rate is particularly high in Paris. The city of Paris, the capital of France, only makes up about 3% of the French population, but people living in France are 20% of all of France's HIV patients. Just last month, the city of Paris rolled out a public health campaign to help promote and combat against the HIV and AIDS. And the slogan for this was, "Let's make Paris a city of love without AIDS." And it was focused on several groups that were particularly at risk for HIV, who were represented by a lot of the posters, like a couple that I've shown here. It's including men who have sex with men, trans people, and people from areas with a high HIV prevalence, such as countries of sub-Saharan Africa. And the campaign was aiming to help fight against AIDS, focusing on techniques such as combating discrimination and stigma against AIDS, encouraging people to get screened and tested, encouraging condom use, and also PrEP therapy and PEP therapy. because of the particularly high rate of HIV and AIDS in Paris, France, there's quite a lot of work being done in Paris to help combat AIDS and HIV. Another interesting thing that's going on in Paris is just last year they introduced their first drug room in a Paris hospital in an area with a high drug use. They've set up a center where people who use IV drugs can come. They can exchange their hard drugs for substitutes along with sterile injection kits so they can safely inject. So this helps reduce the risk of transmission of HIV along with other diseases. As for how AIDS and HIV are being treated in France, the Public Health Department of France encourages people to get screened for HIV. The current guidelines are that all adults should be screened at least once in their life, and for those people in high risk populations more often. The guidelines are for men who have sex with men are encouraged to get tested every 3 months. IV drug users and people who are from high risk areas, such as sub Saharan Africa, are encouraged to get tested every year. Also, in France, PrEP is available. France is one of the first countries to offer it, and in many places, such as in France, they have free clinics where you can go and obtain PrEP therapy. Also, PEP therapy, the post-exposure prophylaxis, is available, and for those guidelines, the French Public Health Department guidelines say encourage people to go to emergency or healthcare facilities to obtain PEP after they've been in risky situations, preferably within 4 hours, but up to 48 hours. And as for those who are already HIV positive, their guidelines are to offer antiretroviral therapy immediately or as soon as possible upon finding out people are HIV positive.